Hello there, welcome to Saber Duel Gaming, where we always take the high ground, and welcome to our retro review of F-Zero on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. While it's probably a little harsh to say that racing games are a dime a dozen, it's probably fair to say that the best ones have had to do something to make themselves stand out from the pack. Games like Mario Kart, Sonic Racer, Wave Race and even Chase HQ all introduced their own separate twist on the racing genre. Games like Gran Turismo and a whole host of Formula 1 racing games going all the way back to the early 90s focused on the sporting aspect of it and simulation. But one particular subgenre within racing that has been extremely successful is futuristic racing. Games such as Wipeout and Extreme G have had a great deal of success with this, but one of the most successful and popular of all time is F-Zero. Released in 1990, the game allowed you to take over one of 4 hovercrafts. Yes, that was considered futuristic in 1990, and the game was taking place in 2560. Apparently the world is going to be very neon at that point. The game's release coincided with the release of the SNES itself, which doesn't do any harm to boost sales. And the game's graphics right from the start was something that would have impressed fans at the time. The innovative secret behind these graphics was a graphic rendering system known as Mode 7, which allowed the game to present a faux 3D look, which was exceptionally useful for racing games at this particular point in gaming history. Alongside the graphics, it was the super fast gameplay that fans really took to. With a great look, speed, and a unique feel, this game had everything it needed when released. And unsurprisingly, the gaming community lapped this game up. It got scores of between around 80 to 90% in each different magazine, which, while that's a relatively wide range, it's not too surprising. Bear in mind, this is quite a niche game. Already it's a racing game, so it's only going to appeal to fans of racing games, but also with it being a less realistic version of racing, certain people aren't going to necessarily take to it. So 80 to 90%, that's still a fair result. Even down the years to 5 and 10 years later, this game was being touted as one of the top 50 SNES games and one of the top games Nintendo had ever released, so it certainly made its mark with the fanbase. People were especially fond of the speed and the way it had a perfect balance between accessibility, fun, and whilst it wasn't exactly super realistic, it was easy to pick up and play. The one thing that maybe let it down was the lack of a 2-player game attached, and this really was screaming out for that. Potentially the only reason that it didn't live on so much longer in people's minds and hearts is because 2 years later, Super Mario Kart was released, and the success this game had and the marketing push behind it, well, it kinda threw all other racing games, apart from the very sports-focused ones, into the dust. Yet despite that, F-Zero would go on to have its own legacy, and multiple other versions of the game would be released. So, that's all well and good, but how does this game stand up now? Yes, it's that whole modern scrutiny thing, bit of a cliche, but when I went back to play this game, how did I find it? Well, the first thing I have to comment on is the graphics, and even looking now, the graphics for this, bearing in mind we're talking about a 16-bit console, are really impressive. You can see where that Mode 7 technique has really benefited the game. It also has to be remembered this isn't a SNES game from the peak years of the console. This came out on release. Games later down the line such as Star Fox would make use of things such as the FX chip to really show what the SNES could do, but this came out right at the start of the system's infancy, so that makes it all the more impressive. The layouts and details on the track are probably a little bit more impressive than the variety shown in Mario Kart 2 years later, so it has that going for it, and whilst there's only 4 karts, they do each have their own cute and distinctive look, so yeah, that's all good graphically. And the music is pretty good too, but the gameplay, not so sure. I'm going to be the first to admit I'm not the biggest fan of racing games, nor am I particularly good at them, but this I found particularly frustrating. Hell, you can see on the footage just how many times I'm bashing into the sides. The controls feel slightly jarring, but more so, the aspects of the tracks which are laid out, such as booby traps and magnets designed to pull your hovercraft off course, I just found them annoying rather than challenging. Perhaps similar to my review of Sonic the Hedgehog, when a game is touted for its speed, anything that hampers that speed doesn't feel like a challenge, it just feels like it's getting in the gameplay's way. In a strange way, this game was probably aged better than games like Mario Kart, partly because of how prominently we've seen that franchise move on. Whereas with this, it still feels like it's preserved in its own little bubble. Going back to it now, it's fun to play. It doesn't feel as exceptional as it once would have done, but it still has its place. I don't think I would have rated it as highly as Mario Kart back then, but coming back to it now and comparing it to Mario Kart and the SNES, feels pretty similar. So I'm going to give it the same score. This gets a retro review of 6 out of 10. Thanks for watching. Please feel free to like, comment and subscribe, and you can find me on TikTok and Instagram as well as right here on YouTube. Take care.